everybody. We're going to be talking about RSForms in Joomla. My name is Laura Gordon. I've been building a Joomla site since about 2004, 2005, since the Joomla 1.0 series. My background was mostly I would build HTML Dreamweaver type sites. I was asked by a nursery school to build a site, and a friend of mine said, try this Joomla thing. So I did, and I got hooked. And the first large site I built, somewhat large, was a public library in Springfield, New Jersey. I've reiterated that site, I think, 5 times since then in different versions. The first time I did it, I think I charged like $600 to build an entire public library site. So they pretty much got my work for free, but I learned everything. That's how I learned how to do everything. And through all of that, I got involved in the Joomla community of New York City with Mitch Pirtle. Some of you may have heard of him. He was one of the founders before the fork or whatever. And I met some really great people through that, and we ran the user group through Lincoln Center, which used to be, I don't know if it still is, was all Joomla. So Lincoln Center had all of their different performing studios and showcases and all that. That was all Joomla. So we had our conferences were in it. I think it was called the Rose Conference Room, and it was gorgeous. And we would have like about 30 people a month would come to our user group meetings. We also ran a couple of events in New York, which were really fun. But since, I would say, Joomla 1.7, I think in the Northeast it kind of decreased a significant amount for various reasons, which is okay, but I still stayed on board. And I've been using RSForms in particular on most of my clients' websites. I've used it for the contact forms, initially because the contact form in Joomla didn't always have the CAPTCHA the way it should, and I'm talking about a long, long time ago. I know that's since changed. And with RSForms, I had a lot more flexibility to do different things. So I've used RSForms on a couple of different sites. One of them would be like a registration for a camp fair. So a client of mine, she would run camp fairs, and she would have 60 camps, each get tables, vendors, kind of like sponsorship, and they would have to register. And her registration process, now I think she made it way overcomplicated, was so complicated. She'd say, okay, well, if you go to 3 fairs, it costs this much, but if you go to 4 fairs, then you get a free website. But if you go to 6 fairs, you get a free website and a free sponsor page. So all of that information had to be done using conditional fields and things like that. And I used to use something else. It was DT Register. Has anyone heard of DT Register? It was a DTH development. So I used that initially, but that was kind of buggy and stuff. So I went back to RSForms once they added conditional fields, and I was able to do most of the magic with that. So RSForms is quite fun, and I like it a tremendous amount. One more point is I'm at Rutgers now, State University of New Jersey, and we manage about over 120 Joomla websites for the School of Arts and Sciences, which is the English department, the math department, the history department, all of those. That's all my group. There's 4 of us that manage 120 sites. And I have to say, if it wasn't Joomla, we would not be able to do that by ourselves. So it's pretty exciting over there. I've been there for 3 years. And there, they use another tool, which I didn't put in my presentation, but I'm going to let you all know about it. It's called VisForms, VisForms. They do not accept payment, number 1. I'm not sure if they do conditional fields, but for basic, simple forms, they are amazing. And it's easy, easy, easy. Some of the things I'm going to show you today with RSForms, I think maybe a little overly complicated the way they did it, like their emails. So when you put an email together, you have to manually put in every field you want in that email, which means when your client calls you at midnight, I forgot to put this in my form, and then you put it in, and because it's midnight, you forgot to put it in the email. Now you know the data's safe, so you know it's okay. They get that registration in, and they call you at 4 in the morning. How come this isn't in the email? Okay, and then you have to put it in the email. So to me, that's work. VisForms does it automatically, which is really nice. So that's a nice tool, and it's free, if I didn't mention it. So that is free. So it's good. I think competition breeds change, and I think it's a good thing. I know RSForms is a sponsor, and again, I stand by it, but I think it's good to know what all the options are. So with that, I want to thank our gold sponsors today, cPanel and Plesk, and if any of you have small companies, large companies, whatever it has to be, and you hear about a Joomla Day, Joomla Camp, or anything like that, sponsor us. It doesn't cost a lot of money, and it means a lot for the event itself. I know when I run the events in New York, a lot of times we have to pay for the space. We have to give a small stipend to any speakers that are coming over from out of the country. You can't run it for, if you're just going to charge people $50 to come for the weekend. It just won't work without the sponsors. So we really appreciate that support. And I know when I run events, I'll say, okay, if you could sponsor us for $100, that'll buy coffee for my entire event. So I can keep the cost low for all the attendees. So just keep that in mind, that if you're paying and you're like, I can pay a little bit more, I can do a sponsorship, do it. It's really helpful to all of us volunteers. So RSForms overview, and I apologize for so much text, but anyway, there's a lot of information out there. So RSForms, as I mentioned, is professional. You do have to purchase it. Right now, I think it's at 19 euros for a single site subscription, which means you're not putting on multiple sites, it's for one site. But you can also pay for like a development subscription where you can put it on as many sites as you want. Typically, the way their support works is if you don't have a subscription and you have the product, there's nothing wrong with putting it on other sites. They're not going to care, but you won't get support. And their support is really excellent. RS Joomla is the company. They've really helped me a lot with a lot of questions I've had on really complex things. So I do recommend doing it. Sometimes what I do when I have a client, if I know they're going to be more needy, I'll tell them to make the subscription purchase, not me. So that way it's under their name. And that's something to think about as a developer. And just instead of just passing the cost to them and you paying it out of your pocket, let them pay for the subscription. Tell them, please sign up with this site, pay the 19 euros, and then just give me the login ID, and then I can help you through that. So I do that with some of the products that I know my customer may be more needy, even if I'm representing them. So I'll help them on their behalf, but this way they own the product. And then guess what? When your customer decides they don't want to pay you anymore, which I'm sure many of us have had that situation, that's fine. They're still running the site and they still have the support that they need. So there are many different layouts. There's now a drag and drop grid. How many of you use RSForms on your sites right now? So a handful do. How many of you have used it with the new grid format? So, okay, a couple of you. So the grid format, it's interesting. So it's just a different layout for you to organize the information. There's multi-language support, the conditional fields. How many of you have used conditional fields? Okay, so a couple. So we're going to show that today. You can map submissions to another database, flexible component for calculation. You can export the submissions, which is excellent, very important, especially your clients that love Excel. You can say, oh, just dump it to an Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to show you how you can do that from the front end as well, for your clients that don't even want to go to the back end, and that's pretty important. You can do payment options, you can do product purchase options, and as I mentioned, VizForms does not have that option, but RSForms does. I've done Authorize.net through RSForms. You just pay a little bit additional for the Authorize.net plugin, and that works perfectly fine, so that's good as well. And you definitely have the CAPTCHA support. Okay, so to create a new form when you're building it, you can use the wizard if you want, and you use the wizard and it'll kind of just create the basic stuff for you. I like to do that, it just makes it easier. Or you can create it from scratch, and that's what the basic form looks like. And as I mentioned, I'll make this available to everyone so you don't have to necessarily look at everything. So if a form already exists, and this I highly recommend, because why recreate the wheel? If your form already exists, or you know someone that created a form, just use that one and start from there, right? So what you can do is you can go to backup and restore, so you can back up the form, back it up, and then you can download it. And one sample form is if you go to RS Joomla, and this is an older version of one of their forms, but you could go to RS Joomla, get sample forms from them, and then install them, and then change whatever you want. So again, as developers, we like to reuse the code. So that's really helpful. You can go to backup restore it so you could grab that file. So that's an actual example from RSForms.
If you do
yes?
that, if you grab an existing form, you have to be conscious of your template perhaps or anything like that, or is it totally independent of your
It won't break your current template, but it may not look good in your current template.
Correct.
Okay, so yeah, you may, depending on what layout they're using. I have found with RSForms, they have a lot of different layout options. So you may have to change the layout option to be Bootstrap 3, Bootstrap 4, Zerb, or whatever. So you may have to play around with those buttons, but I'm looking at it more of a way to start instead of building it from scratch. So, but it won't break anything on your current site. Now, one thing you have to remember, if you are restoring the form, there's an option for if it's going to replace another form. You do not want it to replace another form. I want to make sure I'm saying this right. Because let's say it's form ID 1, and your contact form is form ID 1. If it comes over as form ID 1, you just lost your contact form. So don't do that. Just read, and as I said in my intro class, read what it says. And it's pretty self-explanatory. It says, you really don't want to do this, so say, I know. Yeah, does that answer that question?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, so the overview of the step. Who has never used RSForms at all? So we have a couple. Okay, so RSForms is not intuitive. It's not. So, just when you work with it, think of it as two different areas. So you have form fields and form properties. Okay, just keep in mind everything's in one of those places. So if you get lost, just look in one of those places, you'll find what you're looking for. So basically the fields are going to be all of the elements in the form. Those are all the pieces, right? The properties are all of the general information, your form info, your email messages, all of that stuff is in form properties. It took me a while to just get used to that breakdown because again, it's not Joomla-esque or whatever, it's RS Joomla. That's how they set it up. When you're creating the fields, there are a lot of different field types, and most of these are pretty, they're self-explanatory. Text box, text area, things like that. I circled a couple of ones that you want to make sure that if you want on your form, a lot of times you may not think of it. Free text. It's just what it says. It's free text. So if you want a paragraph somewhere on your form, use free text. That also took me a while to figure out. If you're making a lovely form and you want to put a couple sentences in, how do I do that? Free text. So that's just one note there. A button. You need the button to submit the form, right? So you need to create a button. So you want to put that in there. The caption, anti-spam. So CAPTCHA, there's also, if you install the RSForm plugin, RS CAPTCHA 2, which comes with RSForm, so it's not an extra fee. When you go to RS Joomla, you're going to go to paid downloads, and then go to RSForms, and then click on plugins, forms and plugins. In there, you'll have RS CAPTCHA 2. Once you do that and you enable it, you will have this as an option. So it's better to use this than this, which comes with it. Okay, so that's why, again, I'm just circling things that I know become important. For the payment part, if you install the PayPal plugin, which again is free, but it's in the plugins tab in RS Joomla, you can go here, and these are all the different options you have with the PayPal. Okay, so that's the PayPal plugin. And I'm going to go over a couple of those things, because one really nice option is the payment offline, which you don't always have, and you may, why would you do payment offline? If you're working for a foundation or something like that, like I'm an officer with the Central Jersey Diaper Bank, so there are a lot of potential donors that want to mail a check. They want to do it the old-fashioned way, so we have to give them the option for payment offline. So that's a nice option to have. Okay, so here's the payment piece. So the way the payment works, and again, it's not completely intuitive, so you just kind of like work yourself through it. Number one, you select the payment PayPal. So you put in, where did it go? Payment PayPal, see that field? So I gotta make sure that I put it in here somewhere, okay? Number two, I select the payment offline. I need to select that option too. I can call it pay by check. The PayPal I can choose Visa, MasterCard, whatever. You put whatever text in there you want. Once you put those two in there, you then have to put in, it's called the choose payment option. This drop down is generated based on these two things. Does that make sense? Again, took me a long time to figure that out. Like, why couldn't I just add this and then put in what things I wanted? It's just not the way it works, okay? So if you learned something new today, that's good. But anyway, those are the steps to do it, and then you can see now I have these two things here are coming from these two. So whatever text I put in here, that's what's going to display in the dropdown. You don't actually see this in the form. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. All right, so another nice feature that they have is the actual products, okay? Now, if you're selling like products and stuff online, you don't necessarily want to use RSForms. So I wouldn't necessarily use this as a full-fledged shopping cart or something like that. But, so my husband owns a company, a camp, we'll call it a glorified hobby. Anyway, so he takes kids to amusement parks for the summertime, right? So we've done this for about 15 years. On his registration forms, we allow the kids, the campers, to purchase extra t-shirts. So we put it in their registration packet. So when they register and they give a deposit, they can also buy 1 t-shirt, 2 t-shirts, or whatever. They select it, and it works fine. So to do that, you can add the, here, this option was with a membership payment, same concept. So you want a list of items. So you do the choose products, the multiple products option at the top. This is the text that you would put in here. So it's the dollar amount, type, and then the description. Okay, so you could put a whole list in there, and that's the example that I have here. I'm sorry, you can't see it at all, but if you download the slides, you can see it. So basically, you just put in the totals, and then that's what your drop-down is going to look like, which is nice, and it's easy to do. And again, in RSForms, if you go to RS Joomla, their documentation for this stuff is excellent, as long as you know what you're asking for, right? So that's multiple products. Questions? Yeah.
So, for example, if you're offering something that's like a membership card, and they want to, and you want to give an option of 1, 2, or 3, you could say 1 is this amount.
Absolutely.
And that would, and it would calculate the pricing for the total.
It will, and not only that. So 1, 2, and 3, I'm manually putting that in. So basically, if one person is $10, 2 persons $15, $3 is $20, or whatever, you're manually putting that in. But what's nice is you can have multiple fields for each set of products. So I could sell what t-shirts do you want, what membership options do you want, and it will all add them up together at the end for you. You don't have to do any extra calculations. Okay, so like my camp thing, she has, as I said, okay, so she is a list of I want to register for 1 fair, 2 fairs, 3 fairs, whatever, so she picks that, that has a dollar amount. Then you can select, I want to be a silver web person, you know, whatever it happens to be. That could be another 3 sets of cost.
Right.
So you don't have to only have 1 set of products, which I think, I saw in 1 set of forms that was the case. You could only put 1 of these forms, so fields. So what's nice is you could have multiple fields like this on here. Does that answer that? I saw another hand up.
You answered my question.
Good, okay. See, I can. Okay. All right, so now the form options. So you added all your fields, right? So your fields are on your form, you're good to go. So now with the form options. So again, I'm going to take you through this because I apologize for those of you that have already used RSForms, but it's not easy to find, right? So basically, the first set is, if you go to form layout, so this is form layout here. In the form layout, you can select all the different options. So you can select Bootstrap. You can also do the legacy layouts, which I do not recommend because they're not going to be responsive. These are really going to be dependent on your template. I use some U-theme templates, and I have found some of these work and others do not work at all. Like where the checkboxes just disappear.
Oh, yeah.
Or entire fields. This just happened the other day. I'm like, what just happened? You know, so yeah, it doesn't
I've already
always.
got to dig it into you think about it because.
So this is irrelevant. So it's not just me.
No, it's not just you.
Good. Okay. Because
And
I thought
I
it was
use
very
like
helpful.
templates from
Right,
you think,
okay.
Yeah.
different
Right,
sites,
and that's,
same thing.
Okay. Nice. Okay. So my suggestion to you is try the different ones out and test, and make sure it works the way you want, and make sure you test on cell phone. Make sure it works. Okay. So you gotta. This is trial and error. I can't even give you. Yes, some sites I've used YouKit, other sites I've gone to Bootstrap. Some of them I go back all the way to responsive. It just depends on how your template plays with the stuff that Joomla is giving it. Okay. The other piece that isn't that intuitive is the, it's just called form information. I think form options. This is really important. This determines when you fill out the form if there's that stupid continue button on the bottom. I don't like the continue button. You have to turn it off if you want to. The only way is here. You would never know that. I can't tell you how long it took me to figure that out. Oh, so I could just do it here. So that's number one. It also determines your thank you message. Thank you so much for filling out my form. We love you. Please come back another time. You know, whatever. It can also take you to a separate article. So after you fill out the form, you want to take them to, you know, whatever, to see what the tours are, or whatever it happens to be. This is where you put in the URL as well. So the thing with RSForms is you need to take your time. Don't do anything in a rush because you're going to miss something, I promise you. And make sure you go to that forms options page. Because, I don't know, to me it seemed a little hidden. Was that similar to other people? Or?
Yeah.
So I'm not, yeah, it's like, dude.
It's not an aberration.
No, okay, all right. So anyway, form options, real important, so don't forget that. Okay, customizing the message. Okay, so this is real fun. So when you're in your form options, you have user emails and admin emails. Okay, so let me just explain the difference. A user email is the person filling out the form. So Joe Camper is filling out the form. The user email is what Joe receives, not the administrator, Joe. So I filled out a form. I get a message. Thank you so much for signing up with Thrill Coaster Tours. Here's your confirmation. The admin email is what the administrator receives. So basically the person that owns the company, the person that wants to get it. Now this is where it gets tricky, is the email is completely custom. It really doesn't mean what's actually saved in the form, because that's saved in the database. So you can always, and this is what's frustrating to me, my not administrators, but the owners of the companies get the email, they think that's all that there is. So if I mess up that email, I will get a phone call saying, how come you're not storing Johnny's shirt size? I'm like, I did store the shirt size, it's there, you can export it. They forget about the export, and my husband's one of them, and like, you know, every week or so, I'm like, do you need the date again? Yeah. Can't you just log in? No, I forget. Yeah.
Can you regurgitate the form data in that email to the submitted form data?
It's not easy, but you can. You can. You have to manually do it field by field. So basically what you have to do is you have to, on the right-hand side, when you generate the email, there's a button that says toggle fields. From there, you can select all your fields. You can then paste them into the email. Then you need to make the email look pretty. Because if you just throw them right in there, if you have a multi-select field, there is the field value, there's the field select, like there's 3 different versions, the field text, and it'll show the fact that I got a white shirt, it'll say white shirt, because it shows the field value and the field text. So you have to clean that up. You have to test it and clean it up, because again, this is what the person that's paying you to do this is the email that they're receiving, and they will be calling you because they won't understand it. Because when I initially did it, I would just copy it all in. They don't like that because it doesn't look pretty and they don't understand it. So yeah, you have to fix that. Now here's the other thing. By default, if the person did not select, you know, they didn't select anything, so it's empty. If you put that field in there, what'll happen is it'll just show the field with curly braces. Like, let's say the person didn't put in their last name, okay, just whatever. So on the email, if I put the last name in there, but if it's empty, it won't just not show anything. What it's going to show, I'm pretty sure it shows the curly braces, last name, curly braces. So when your administrator receives that, they get very upset. So here's a conditional way to do it. So here's a little trick. So if this contains a value, then print it out. End if. That is a lot of work, but that's the way you have to do it. There's no other way. So if a field is filled out, you can do these, what I call conditions. You just have to type it in. So if you have 100 fields on that form, so you can imagine that camp registration form, and then when they want to change it, I have to remember to go back to the email setup and fix this. All right, because when they get those colors, we know it's not, okay, it just means they didn't fill it out. You know. So yes, you can dump it in, but you do have to add a little code if your client's going to be very upset over it. Okay? Yeah.
I found that when I look on YouTube, they have examples or tutorials, and then they'll give you what that code is, and you can find your exact information. Because
Great.
other than that, like, where can I get?
You don't know.
I don't know.
Right.
What's to put the information?
And RS Joomla has this as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So RS Joomla has this, and now you have this for me. So yeah, absolutely, yeah, yeah. And YouTube is great for this stuff. So the way this breakdown is so if this contains a value, I want to display the caption. So that's whatever caption I set up. Now you may not want that. You may want to actually put in your own words. And then I want to show, what did I do here? The caption, why did I do the caption again? I don't remember. Oh, the amount, I'm sorry. So then I show the amount. So I have the value, the amount, and the price. Yeah, so I put all that in there. And then close if. Okay, I did this a while ago. That's fine, good. Any questions on that? So that's editing, customizing that email text. And to get there, you click either user or admin, and then you click on that button for edit the text. Questions? Okay. Why is it not going? Put that. Hold on. Did change? Okay, all right. Conditional fields. So conditional fields, let's see. I think it's like a couple of years old in RSForms. Like it's not. It definitely hasn't been there from the beginning. That's why I never used it before. I think maybe 4 years or something. I don't know.
Probably, yeah.
It's relatively new. It's a little clunky, but it does work. So basically, so this example that I have here, you see all the different conditional fields I have. So basically, this is for a camp registration. So what they do is they only want one camper to register at a time. They determine if they're in different age groups, so if they're 4 to 5, 6 to 7, 8 to 9, or whatever, based on their age group or what grade they're in, I think this grade. So based on their grade, they get different options to sign up for. So they can sign up for the birds and bees butterfly camp for 3 days, July 4th through 2nd, or whatever. So we have a lot of conditions because if they select this age group, so first I have them select the age group. Based on that, I show what options they have. And they were okay. I said, well, are you going to have more than one camper sign up at a time or multiple? They said, no, we just want one at a time because we want it to work the way our paper forms work, and we make them do it, different paper form for each camper. Good, all right, that makes it a little easier. Because if they wanted to do it for multiple campers, then you can imagine how many different versions of these fields would be. So I was very happy about that. So you want to make sure when you're working with your clients that you are flexible to a point, but not to the point where you're going to break. You know, and I try to, there's a happy balance there of thinking, okay, well, I can do this, but it's going to take an extra 10 hours. Is that 10 hours worth it to you? And then they can decide. If you don't tell them that, then they're just going to, you know, ask for the world, and you're pretty much working for them 24 hours 7, which none of us want to do. So anyway, to add the fields, you click on a new condition. You can determine if you want to show or hide. You can suggest, I want to show or hide the block label, the label, and the field for a certain field, if any or all of the conditions match. So basically, if the child age is in this group, then I want to show the sessions attend for 4 or 5. And I basically did that for every combination. Unfortunately, what I wish they had is, now that they're doing the grid format, it would be nice if each grid area was labeled or identified somehow. Again, this is my wish list. It doesn't happen. If you could then hide that entire
Yes.
grid element, and then all the fields in it would just disappear. That would be really smart and not too hard to do, but they haven't done that. So
Breezy Forms does that.
Breezy Forms does it? Okay, so jump over to Breezy Forms.
I know, that's
But you
it.
can. I've tried Breezy Forms and I had issues with it. I've tried, and I keep going to different, trying different things. RSForms seems, right now.
Yeah, their front end layout is terrible.
Yeah, so
That's terrible.
what can you get, right? Okay, so questions on the conditional fields? Okay, so that's pretty simple. All right, we're gonna lock up again. Okay, so the grid. So some of you are new to this grid format. So in order to resequence your fields, the old version of RSForms was basically you would just drag them up and down. That doesn't exist anymore. You cannot do that. If you're using a version of RSForms that you can do that, you need to upgrade. Keep in mind, RSForms, you are taking input from outside users, you should always be on the most current version, especially with RSForms. If any tool, I mean, think about it, this is where you're gonna get hacked. You're like opening yourself up. So, especially with RSForms, I would be paying for the subscription, and I would be telling the client, we gotta keep this up and going. If they don't, lose them as a client, because your reputation will be at stake if they get hacked. Because remember, you're opening the door. So anyway, the way the grid works is you have to go into that form options area, click on grid. By default, everything's in the same grid, and all you have to do is just drag the fields up and down, okay? You can add new grid elements. So when you add, like, a new grid element would be like a grid row, and you can say, I want it to be 1 column, 2 columns, or 3 columns. So here, I did 2 columns, and by default, it puts fields here, nothing here. All I have to do is take the field, drag it into this column. It will be stackable, it's lovely, and it works great. One thing I'm not thrilled about, because I'm going to give both sides, right, is that again, these grid elements don't have the opportunity to make a class for. Why? There should be, shouldn't there? So I'm hoping maybe soon they will, because to me, if I have a grid element, I may want that entire part to have like a light gray background, right? Which would be easier to see. The top grid element, dark blue, no, I probably wouldn't do that. But anyway, like a white, a gray, or whatever. And I know you can do that by hard coding your layout, which you can, but then you just lost the whole dynamic capabilities of RSForms. If you there is an option where you can manually generate your layout. You can build the form yourself, that's fine. But then you lose the capability of it being dynamic, which I don't want to do. So for right now, as far as I know, no one knows of any ID representations for each of these grid rows, right? There's nothing, no. There should be though, because to me, if this element here, like this whole block, had some kind of ID, think about what you could do with that. You could change a lot of things. Joomla, if you're listening. Any questions though on the grid? But this is the only way you can sequence your fields. You can't do it in that other page anymore. Okay, directory. Where are we at with time? Okay. Who's used the directory? New. Okay, this is very, very cool. So with RSForms, okay, you fill out your data. You can then display this data on your front end. Now, why would you do that? It's kids' camp registrations. Why would I display it on my front end? What if you could display it on your front end for just your registered users? So the camp director could log in on the front end, my husband, can log in on the front end, can see the data of who's registered. He's the only one that can see it. What if I do that, then he can have an export button where he could click that button himself. Wow, I did do that, but he keeps forgetting his user ID and password, which won't help. But think about it, that works. So that's one example of a directory. Okay, so I'm hoping you're thinking about with your clients, maybe this could be useful, right, to see the data. Another example, what if I register for camp? Now, this is only going to work if your site, your users log in. Now, if they don't log in, it's not going to do anything. But let's say they log into the site. Everybody gets just a registered user ID, right? So I log into the site. I have a book club, for example. The Go On Girl Book Club. It's an African-American book club. And they have, 50 chapters all across the United States. And they fill out a membership payment. Or they fill out a questionnaire, okay, about the website for the month. They log in, because only members can do it. They log in, they fill out their questionnaire, and then tomorrow they want to edit that questionnaire. They want to edit what they just filled out. So what you can do is if you do a directory and you show the fields, you can give a menu option for the directory that you can only edit what you entered. Because when RSForms filled out, they keep the user ID that filled it out. So when you go in there, I can log in and I can click on edit my questionnaire, and guess what? It's only going to show my questionnaire, and I can click edit and I can edit any of my entries. Now what I'm not sure of is after I edit the entries, if I hit save, if the administrator gets re-emailed. I'm just not sure if that happens here. I was thinking about that. But you can try that. Okay, so that's another way to do it. So seeing the data, editing the data. Or what if you're running a camp and you want the camp director to be able to edit the data themselves, right? But you don't want to give them back-end access. You can do that. So you can give them front end. So basically that's the example of, yes, and I'm gonna show you how to do it,
Oh,
yeah.
no, with the directory, so if someone fills out your form, can it
Yeah.
actually show what they filled out
Yeah.
before they submit the form?
No.
No, they submit
This
it
is
and then,
meant after such,
and
this
it's
is-
mostly for admin, no.
It doesn't have to be. If the person's logged in when they fill it out, then they can log in tomorrow and they can edit or view their information.
Right.
But it's only gonna work if they're a logged in user.
But
else
it's
I
not
don't
like,
know
it's
who's-
like if you were using RSForms for someone to purchase something, if they filled out their form and they clicked what they wanted, normally if it was a typical shopping cart, they would be able to see what their order was gonna be before they submitted. That's not what this does.
No, I wouldn't use it for this. I mean, you can have that. I actually had my developer do a continue and save button, and I had code written in. I had a developer write the code to do that for me. But no, not,
Okay.
yeah, because that's prior to submission. This is after submission, okay? So these are the different elements. So when you create the directory, so you go to forms and you click on directories. By default, none of your forms have directories enabled. That's just the way it starts out. So number one, you go in for your specific form, okay, so you click on it, and it'll say, I think this, it's like directory not enabled, okay? And so you then can option, you can select I want PDF support, which means as a director of the camp, I can go in and I can click show me the PDF of that person's registration. Very helpful to do on the front end. Okay, also the CSV support. So my director can then export the data. Okay, so you have to click those to yes. Number two, up here, you can define the permissions. Who's able to do what? Who's able to edit the submissions? Who's able to delete the submission? So that's all in the permissions area. Okay, so you can select, I want only super users. I want them to only edit their own. So you do have to have that checked on if you want them to be able to edit their own. So you can do the submission, the permissions. Next piece, this is fabulous right here. So you can go field by field. What do you want to be able to play? Now, for example, first thing, show in listing. So if I have 100 fields, I do not want my listing to be this long. I just want to show maybe the person's name. So for a camp director, I want to show their name, the kid's name, the kid's birth date, or something, just a couple of fields. So I can select just a couple of fields that are important to me, so that's good. Number two, I can select what's searchable. So you may say, why searchable? Well, let's say you have 1,000 people in there. What can I search on if I want to search on anything to find the record that I'm looking for? So it just makes it, think about all of you go in the back end and work with submissions. This is kind of a way for the people who want to go to the back end to do some of that stuff, okay? So that's the searchable. Editable, what can you edit? So you can decide, you can say, you know what? They can edit the color of the shirt, but I don't want them to edit the number of shirts they're ordering because they can't order anymore. Or I don't want them to edit anything about the shirts because we've already placed that order, but they can edit their child's nickname. So you can specify what is editable, what can be editable, okay? Next, show in the details. So when I have my listing, when I click on the edit or the view button, I get the details. What fields do I want to show there? Maybe I don't want to show their payment total, or maybe show their kid's birthday for whatever reason. So you can decide here what's shown in the details. Last one, export to CSV. What do you want to be able to be dumped in the CSV file? So you can say, I want everything dumped, I don't want anything dumped, So again, you can specify what works for you. All right, so I love the way this out. This has been around for a while, actually. It's just I don't know when I tried it for the first time. It was a few years ago, but it's been around for quite a while, so they've been revamping it. And this is new. This I haven't worked with before. They have the details layout, so you can decide what the page is going to look like when you go to the details. So you can specify that here and play around with that. And this, again, this is all in the directory view of RSForms for that specific form. So you have a lot of options here. You also have CSS and JavaScript, so you can do more with it. Okay, so you can really play. I haven't done much with the emails part, but then there's also the PHP scripts. Okay, so here's an example of it running. So in order for this to work, you have to set it up in RSForms, right? So you set it up, you got to do all of those pieces step by step. So be patient, you got to get all that working. The next step, you create a menu item. Everyone, I assume, knows how to create a menu item, right? So you create a menu item, and it's a directory. And then you select which form. Now, it's only going to show you the forms for the directory that you set up before. If you didn't set it up, it's not gonna work. So you select the form that you want. This is real important right here. Enable submissions directory right here, okay? Yes or no? By default, that's set to no. The reason why is RSForms or RSJoomla wanted to make it a little bit more secure. So even if they know you turn the directory on, when you create the menu item, they want to make sure, they're basically saying, you're sure you really want to do this? Because you do have to be careful that this is private data, okay? So you want to turn that to yes. Show only confirmed submissions. So Diane, your question about, so I don't know with the confirmed, if it's in, see, I think confirmed means the payment is already through. I'm not sure what their definition of confirmed, because now I'm thinking about, because when you're filling it out, it's not even in pending, like it's not even stored anywhere.
Right.
So I
They
think
just
that,
submit.
yeah, I don't think, but I'm just thinking it through. I think confirmed is like pending, not pending, I'm sorry, like the payment status is confirmed.
When you talked about that aspect of it, you mentioned earlier about it saving the database. Is this updating, in other words, your camp people that are submitting, are they becoming a Joomla user
No.
or is there an RS user database?
There's no user at all. So, good question. So the question was, when someone fills out an RS form, are they becoming a user in Joomla? By default, no, they are not. They have no user record whatsoever. The only way they can edit their own submissions is if they already have a record. So it's separate. Now, you could have RSForm create a user record for them. So you can go that step. So I didn't add the PHP for that piece, but you can have RSForm add the person as a user, check to see do they already exist as a user, then add them as a user to the system. So you can add that piece, but it is not guaranteed. Does that make sense? So there's no, so if I fill out the form and I'm not logged in and I don't do that extra piece, RSForm does not know who I am. So I cannot edit my own submission. You know, because it doesn't know who I am.
We could use a couple of them that have form-based systems, and they can either build their own user database, or they can do that and create a Joomla user as part of that. And there lies my question. I was wondering how well this would work in terms of not a single purchase event, but more of a subscription type event, where the customer would naturally want to log in time to time and, hey, where am I on my
I
subscription?
don't know. See, okay, I'm old school. I don't know if I would use the forms as subscription events necessarily. In order to do that, I think you'll have to add significant code to that. Does anyone have a comment on that, or, you know, there are other tools I use,
There are.
like RS subscription. Isn't it RS subscription? Yeah.
RS events.
Part of the same group.
They're the same company, yeah.
Yeah.
So to me, RSForm was one of their first tools, I think, that RSJoomla created. And to me, that's more of, I don't want to say one-off, because it's not necessarily. I think it's the basis of all of their other tools. They've used the code for, so.
The form's the entry point for that.
Exactly, right. So basically, I don't think I would use it necessarily for subscriptions. To me, the form is more one-off. You know, I'm registering for a camp or something like that. But I would use RS subscriptions to do something more like that, if that's. Now, what I don't know is RS subscriptions, I'm assuming that uses Joomla Core, right? They don't have their own user thing. I don't know. I have to look that up. Yeah, I hope not. Because you don't necessarily, you know, it's one thing, it's always best to play nice in the sandbox type of thing and to have multiple sets of users. I mean, even Community Builder uses the same user structure. It uses comp profile, or, you know, it has extra fields, but it's still using Joomla's user table. Yeah. Does that kind of answer the question?
It does.
Okay.
Thank
Other
you.
questions? No? Okay. I'm sorry. So here is an example of the listing. So I picked out a couple of fields. I did a listing. I have a button here for download selected CSV, so I could download it if I want. I have here, I can preview it, edit it, or create a PDF for these entries. And that's because I'm logged in as an administrator. And then when I go here, I can edit my data. Okay, so it's pretty nice out of the box. This is something I actually didn't realize it could do until yesterday. So some of these forms I've just added. If you want to have the user, again, it's only going to work if the user's logged into the system when they fill out the form, which for them, it would work out perfectly, because they're already members. If you change this, instead of a 0 to the word login, when I click on it, it's automatically only gonna bring up my entry. I can't see anyone else's entries. So I log in as Laura Gordon, and I can only see myself. And then I can edit it or review it. Very powerful, very easy out of the box. So anyway.
You can edit or view whatever fields the developer deems as editable.
That is correct. Yep, yep. So think of how
Any date
powerful it is.
sensitivity to the edit field? Like
Say that again?
Any date sensitivity to, you made an example of, well, they can change their shirt color, but what if they already made a purchase? So is there any date sensitivity to say, hey, after 30 days, you can't change shirt color either?
Assuming you'd have to do some kind of PHP for it to change that, or you as the developer have to change that question to not make it editable.
Expiration.
What?
Once you order the shirt.
Once you order the shirts, right, exactly, exactly. Jay, question?
No
You're good?
questions.
Okay, all right. So that makes sense to everybody? Yeah, so that's really powerful. Hopefully, I'm hoping you're thinking of different ways that you can use it. Okay, so now, and I have a few minutes to go. So adding PHP to forms. So Rod, who wasn't able to make this presentation, gave me a couple of slides to use for adding the PHP. Now, I already showed you a little bit with the emails and different things that you can do. So in his situation, I hope I'm explaining it correctly for you, Rod. Basically, he was using the Stripe plugin. So this is different than the PayPal plugin. Remember, I showed you the PayPal plugin, which is, I think, with RSForms, marries really nicely. It really gives you a lot of flexibility there. And they made it really easy. I actually had an issue with one of my clients with Stripe where she wasn't getting the cash quick enough. Yoga company, yeah, she was. She actually switched back to PayPal because she thought she was getting the money more quickly into her bank account. You know, so if you're a cash flow business, that's something you want your customer. It's really up to them what payment use gateway they're going to use, but they should test it out and see and make sure that for them. And she tried it for about 2 to 3 months, and repeatedly it just wasn't. And again, it's not necessarily negative about Stripe. Maybe enough money wasn't coming through or whatever. But she was a cash flow business, and she needed that cash in her account. And it took a little while. But anyway, so his client was using it. What they wanted was Stripe or PayPal, they all always add extra fees. So they were making it a requirement that when you purchase via credit card, that you have to pay an extra 2.9% plus the 30 cents. That they will tack that onto your bill, whatever the product is. The plugin doesn't do it automatically, and one issue he was having is with the plugin, he wasn't able to change that amount. Now remember, with PayPal, we can change that amount. So that's why when I heard this, I was like, wow, that's a lot of work. Because with PayPal, we're able to change. There's also a donation field where you can put any amount you want. You could create as many fields as you want, and you can have them hidden and stuff like that. But basically, he wanted, when the person clicks submit, the script takes the amount sent to Stripe and changes it to an amount which is calculated. So basically, he's changing the amount that gets sent to Stripe. So here's the formula. So amount, there's your string, is payment plus the payment times the 0.029 plus the 30 cents, and then the Stripe will receive the instance from RS Pro Stripe of whatever the amount is. So that's basically what he was trying to do. Okay, next. He said the case is after the form is processed, they update the table in the database to reflect the payment and are used for an offline system. So again, I apologize because it's not my product necessarily, but basically here's what he's doing. And you can put the PHP code in your form. So in your form, when you go to that form properties area, there is an area for PHP. You can put as much PHP code in there as you wish. But he's going to the database for Joomla. Okay, so that's my DB here. He's running a query and insert into query. So he's going to insert into one of the tables. What table? PDO4J, that's just the extension of the table, but order payments. So that's not a Joomla table, that's not Joomla core, that's a table he created. Okay, into it, this data, these columns with these values, and that's what he's going to insert into that table. So that's an external table, okay? And then he's going to run it. So he's going to run that insert statement after the form is saved. Next. Another option that you have, I'm not sure exactly where he's putting most of this field, most of the code. You can either put the code in at the form level itself or in your fields. So your fields can have PHP code within themselves. So you can put that in there as well, which is what I see he's doing right here. So if you have a field that has this, chances are there's some kind of code. So now let's go over what the code's doing. So in this example, 2 variables are passed through the URL to the form, among other things. This code checks param1, which is the account number, and then queries the amount they owe. This could be any field in the database, and then it displays the result. Okay, so here we're putting the code in itself, and there's the code, account value. They're running this, the get application. The account is account value. I'm getting the input from param1, so whatever the parameters that's coming in. I'm running my query, select the bill. There's my amount from that. Well, that's a different table, I guess. Underscore table is called a little differently, where the account equals my account ID. Okay. Next, I'm getting the result. I'm loading it. I'm throwing it into an H3 amount that you owe, and whatever the result is. So that's then going to appear on the page, and they'll return the result. So that's ends up with. I always need the wrap-up side. Okay. Look, I'm on the last page.
Okay, and after this, the afternoon keynotes in
We're over there,
across the
right?
street.
Across the hall. And that starts at,
12:15.
it starts at 12:15?
Um,
Oh, shoot. Yeah, I'm
or
late.
12:30, maybe.
Okay. Here's the example of his form, and that's about all she wrote. And that's the amount you owe, right there. There's my H3. That's the field right there. Okay. Any questions? You good with RSForms? All right, thank you so much for coming.
I had-
And-